Note the following. This is not some outraged ethics dog whistle type video to rake in views. Or maybe it is. Perhaps I should leave that ambiguous just to see the brand of consumer that style of content would propagate. In South Africa, there are deep and fundamental flaws in the way geek culture is viewed that severely limit which parts of it are able to be covered in any meaningful capacity. Much of this information will be based around what I have observed as someone who's been able to function within these spaces. And to start with, I'd like to speak about Comic-Con Africa, which has been able to find its place within this country's nerd cultural context. And not only that, Comic-Con Africa has managed to become the space with which geeks can interact in any meaningful way. The challenge we run into is that the voice of Comic-Con Africa has become so loud that we could only view the culture through that context and through the context of those who they align themselves with. The issue here is that the geek community in South Africa is so small that the only people with information are those who are a part of the machine. Unlike other industries, there aren't any outside parties who are functional insiders. As a small industry, the news outlets addressing geek culture are, by and large, addressing the culture in a positive light. As such, the baseline norm in how we talk about geek culture is from the context of industry compliance. I don't possess the knowledge or the access to look deeper into the industry, and it's very rare to find a local content creator who does. Well, except for Caleb, who does have the clout and draws upon that clout to have people in the industry on his platforms. But Caleb is a movie reviewer and not a news journalist, at least not to the degree that he'd be beholden to that format. He doesn't have to go down that road, which makes it all the more compelling when he does. His interviews with industry members like Thais Kosana and Luke Ndolis is a step in the right direction. By its nature of being small, geek journalism in South Africa will have impedances outside of its control. To expand on this idea, the ultimate geek insider in South Africa is arguably Sam Wright, who just a year ago made a video entitled Death of the Gaming Journalist, where she laments the shift in information and journalism and how journalists have become a corporate mouthpiece rather than a source of incisive information. But it becomes very clear at the end of that video that her issue is not with gaming journalism, but rather gaming reporting, in how the advent of social media has made it so anyone can become a reporter because anyone with access to new information, as does everyone with a phone, can report on it long before those who have been known to fill that role. It's a good video which I highly recommend, but upon hearing the point she was making, it made me realize that perhaps South African anime and comic book fans do not have local journalism to investigate, consolidate, and disseminate information. We are beholden to the news that journalists on the scene can consolidate and then share with the world, at which point the reporters can spread like wildfire. Recently, the anime site Sakuga Blog wrote an article translating an interview between my dress-up darlings core staff, such as series director Keisuke Shinohara, character designer Kazumasa Ishida, and chief animation director Junya Mazaki. This is indicative of the depth of information that sites like Sakuga Blog would put out. When I read their article on Studio Uvotable's experimental past in celebration of Karano Kyokai's 15th anniversary, I was amazed at just the sheer breadth of information that I rarely get on anime YouTube or TikTok. Now obviously Sakuga Blog has translators who can source the information in Japanese and then disseminate it to their English-speaking audiences. And I'm not saying that geek YouTubers and content creators should be going this deep into covering their media. And perhaps I am asking for too much, but it's important to understand that anime, comics, and gaming industries are the sum of different individuals working together behind the scenes in pursuit of the common goal, and they need to be celebrated and they need to be observed. Comic-Con Africa has done everything right so far, but having the most popular YouTubers is not enough. This is my greed talking, but I want more. I want the voices, the directors, the writers. I want to have a conversation with Naoko Yamada so I could pick her brain on the stylistic influences that gave birth to K-On! And Tamako Market. If the biggest source of geek culture can go deeper into celebrating each form of media they propagate, perhaps it would inspire the fans to do the same in how they interact with said media. Perhaps this would make the depth of information something to learn from and not just something to consume and then move on from. As it stands, the most compelling piece in Geek Journalism is that tech girl video. She's using her knowledge and place within the gaming industry to find the most relevant information and speak about it. The mission of all journalism is to find truth and report it, but there is another aspect of it that seeks to hold power to account. And that's another thing. The way in which we view geek media is inherently optimistic, so influencers within the industry will seek to uphold the powers that be instead of hold them to account. And why wouldn't they? As creators, we have very limited resources, and the powers that be have been good to us, which means that good news are well and good, but they aren't news. The pieces that seem more inherently newsworthy to many journalists are often things that can be used to tell a story about how people in positions of power are not all they make themselves out to be. In bigger industries, stories like this are a dime a dozen, but in our country, the industry is too small and too new to have anything newsworthy happening. Creators who lean into geek journalism may not be pessimistic, but they are patriotic and very partisan. Even when you look at Caleb's aforementioned videos and Sam's content, they are a celebration of the individual or the media in question, as well as the pure bliss of the fans within that media. So I am not looking for negative stories about my favorite creators breaking the trust of their audience. Truth is not inherently negative, it's just true. South African geek culture produces journalism for commercial reasons, and that's okay because the culture needs to grow. And in order to grow, it needs its commerce. But I just wish more creators would start chasing events and not just trends. Thank you for watching.